Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This week I have Kate with us. I'm super excited to share with you more about who she is and what her business is all about. Kate, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tony. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Let's kick it off with a one word open. If you could use one word right now to share with us how you're feeling in this moment, what would that be?
I don't know if it's in this moment, but generally, insouciant is a good word that describes me. And I had to look that word up when someone first used it to describe me. And they were actually insulting me, they thought. But I took it as a compliment. It means, rule breaker, lawless, person who's zagging when others are zigging. And that's pretty much my MO. And I've learned to be really proud of it because um, it gets it's just gotten me to meet and know and do things that are consistently unexpected, right? My life seems like a big old zigzag, but I now have the wisdom to look back and see the straight line because I was able to make weird choices, make unusual choices, right?
That's really awesome. Um, let's take 3 to 5 minutes. If you could share with us your background and then also about your business, how you launched it and where you are at today and all that good stuff. I would love for you to take that time to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for asking. On the zigzag line, I started out in my life as a line cook. I worked in a ton of restaurants in the background. And interestingly enough, that the lawlessness of the kitchen, everything Tony Bourdain wrote is true. I lived that book, by the way. But I love that lawlessness and the camaraderie that all comes out of it. Then I moved into radio. So I was a rock and roll DJ for about a dozen years, up and down the Eastern Seaboard, live radio. Oh my God, people don't even know what that is anymore. We used to play. They're called carts, but they were like 8-track tapes, basically. And so I learned to do segues and what theater of the mind meant, and why that's so important, and the value and beauty of how, just like you do every day here on this show, when you hold the mic, there's something regal about that, right? And you're the leader in this scenario, but your job, if you're doing it well, is to make the rest of us feel as though we have a voice, right? And that's the art. So my last gig in radio was broadcasting to 20 million listeners a day for XM satellite radio. And what I learned about the neuroscience of radio actually influences how I then opened a marketing agency randomly. But my first client was Walmart, and I got Walmart 130% ROI year over year for 3 years. Segue, somehow I made it to this juncture. I'll share it with you guys over some beers. It'll take a few beers someday, but I suddenly now I own an artificial intelligence powered piece of software that uses all the things I learned from being a line cook to radio to marketing for Walmart, to give you the ability um, to not have to think about what to say on social anymore, right? So our AI, it's called Lately. Lately's AI instantly learns what your customers want to read, watch, or hear by studying your analytics and building writing models on the basics, the words, the phrases, the sentence structures that you use and how people respond to that. And then we atomize long form content, just like this video, into hundreds or even thousands of mini headlines with the matching video clips. So you can have the highest quality content and a lot of it essentially by pushing a button.
That is so cool. And I'm really excited to see what the outcome is going to be of this
Yeah,
of this
because
episode.
it's
When I give you all the files and stuff, it'll be really
for
cool to
sure.
see. Really cool. Really cool. Awesome. So let's talk about some recent wins. So if you could share with us a recent win that you've experienced and what was your takeaway from that, Kate?
Boy, there's so many. So I mean, every day the win I experience is picking myself up off the floor, right? I get punched in the face every day, Tony, and it's hard. I drink too much, I eat too much, I don't do meditation enough. There's all these things that I don't do to take care of myself, right? Because I'm so worried about taking care of others, my team, my husband, but he's pretty good. But the team I worry about the most. So I think but to be more serious, like I'm constantly reminded about how important empathy is, and sympathy, of course. And I do remind my team of that all the time, but I have to be reminded as well. How can I lead them and do it in a way where they feel my pain and they understand my urgency and my struggle enough to motivate them, but not enough to cripple them? And we've gone through, we always go through challenging times. Recently, they've been more challenging than they have been in a while, and we're still smiling. And that's taken some doing. I must tell you.
I couldn't agree with you more. So, yeah,
There's stories behind these eyeballs here. You can see it in me, right?
absolutely. That's cool. Let's talk about, if you don't mind, let's talk about failure. So, and
Sure.
threefold. If you could share with us what failure means to you,
Mm.
and a recent failure you experienced in business, and your takeaway from that.
I mean, failure is it's so weird because it's in your mind, of course. That's one thing. I played sports. I was a goalkeeper in soccer all through high school and college, or most of college. And it's one thing to fail because you lost the game, but it's another thing to fit that's as a team, and then you fail individually, right? So what's the pressure you're putting on yourself? So is it that I didn't block the ball and we won anyways, right? That's different. um, when you're the CEO, all of that pressure is on you, right? And so recently, I mean, where can I start? I uncovered a $240,000 accounting error. I realized that our churn was exponentially worse than I thought it was. I realized that some team members were promising discounts to people without having chatted about it first, and not all these intentions were good. Everybody wants to win. Nobody was doing anything intentionally to screw with the company. Just you're moving so quickly that things do fall through the cracks. And in the end, it's only my fault, Tony. It only is my fault, of course, because the buck has to stop with me. Um, but but the worst failure. It's funny because all these failures there have been quite a lot recently, but none of them feel as bad as I. So I haven't raised in a couple years, Tony. About almost 2.5 years ago now, I'd circled $2 million and I was looking for a lead investor. So I was going to raise my first venture fund. I've raised a bunch of angel money, almost $3 million, but this is our first priced round, not priced, but venture round. And I couldn't find the lead. And that's when all that data came out about female founders only able to get 2.3% of all venture funding, right? Not very much. And why, like how the gaslighting and all these kinds of things that were happening to me, but I didn't realize it. And nor could I imagine that it was true, right? It just seemed so shocking to me. But some other female mentors and advisors said, hey, this is happening to you. So I had no choice but to drop the burn of the company from 100K to 10K, meaning asking a lot of my team members not to get paid, right? Or take half salaries. And then we went through a year where we doubled salaries and we got on some we doubled MRR and we got on some big customers, but it was still, pretty tight. And then I got us into a world famous accelerator in your neck of the woods, up in San Francisco with Jason Calacanis. So here we are, we're finally on the West Coast. We're getting that love. We raised a little money, and now I've got 4 million circled. I'm going to be oversubscribed, and I got that damn term sheet, the one I've been chasing for 2 years. I got it. I've got others promised to me, and I don't close the deal. And COVID was a huge factor. I mean, COVID happened right then, right? All my meetings evaporated because nobody was going to conferences or getting on planes. But it was more than that. Like I was dragging my feet. I had to make a choice that I didn't know how to make or want to make. And I was, it was it was crushing. I graduated the top of my class from Calacanis too. Like I had everything. I had all the gold. I was sitting on it. And that failure, those two failures, Tony, feel worse to me than anything I just described to you that's happened recently. And it's because my ego is involved. This is part of the game, my game that I'm playing. And I haven't been able to to win this part of the game. And it's just a known thing that all CEOs should be able to do, is to get to their venture round. And I can't do this one, and I don't know why. And part of me doesn't really care anymore, but part of me, because I actually don't need the money, and we have money troubles for sure, but like the thing that I just want to rub it in. I want to rub it in and be like, I did this and you didn't get in, to all the people who like wasted my time and turned me down for whatever reason. And that's about my ego, right?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us because I know that's it's made a big impact on you, but also you've learned from it, and also our audience
Mhm.
just had a big takeaway there too. So thanks for sharing that. And that
Yeah.
reminded me of someone else I had on the show, and their ARR was 25 million, and they had a lot of churn. They were trying to figure out what was going on because their COA was so high, and they found out it was the card updater. So we have people on reoccurring, the
Yep.
credit cards were declining, and he didn't know that you could get a service that if the credit card updates, it automatically the system could update it instead of you calling and emailing, chasing down your customer. So it quickly in 24 months went from 25 million to $100 million company,
Wow.
and that was the biggest contributing factor. He and it's one of those things that just slips through the cracks. But it had to bubble up for him to recognize us as a leader of the company, like you caught that
Yeah.
mistake as
It's
well.
not
And
because we're idiots. It's just because like there's so many houses on fire all the time,
yeah,
which believe me are more important than that thing, which is crazy, right?
yeah,
And we were just talking about this the other day with one of our investors, and like, yeah, like some of our under our kimono, it's ugly right now, but it's always actually really is. And I have that special gift of seeing the glass half empty. So it's always uglier than to me, of course, right? But I just kind of put my foot down and I thought, you know what? He's either going to think she's the kind of girl that can fix this problem or not. And that's all that matters, right? It doesn't matter how ugly it is. It's, do you have the gumption to fix it?
exactly. And move forward, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
very
Yeah, right.
cool.
All I can do, I mean, believe me, I've cried. I've cried, I've stamped, I've screamed, and I've learned you can only do that for, a couple seconds, and maybe you can have some tequila later, but like you got to move on. There's more important shizzle to worry about, right?
Absolutely. If we could go back in time and you're sitting in front of your 21-year-old self and you had 30 seconds to give yourself one piece of advice, what would you say to your 21-year-old self, Kate?
Don't smoke. Probably. But boy, I loved every single cigarette. That's for sure. I think the other thing would be to trust my gut. I wish I don't regret anything, Tony. Everything I've been through, hard and bad, is all for a reason. I know that. But if I was able to listen to my gut sooner, I might have avoided some substantial pain along the way.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us as well.
Yeah, sure.
Now, if there was a question that you wish that I've be asking you, or I didn't ask you, or when you're giving your keynotes, or when you're doing interviews, there's that one question that you love when people ask you, or it could be a question no one's ever asked you, and you're wondering why is no one asking that question. What would that question be? And if you could answer it as well, that'd be great.
I know, I knew this question was coming, of course, and it's a hard one. I just generally speaking, the questions that I wish people would ask me had to have nothing to do with the topic. And I do that a lot. I think it's really interesting when people just kind of out of the blue ask you random things like, "Do you have a dog? What's his name?" Or "Do you like swimming?" Or "Have you ever made pizza from scratch?" Think just random things, because then you get into an interesting place and you find out, you peel back the layer, right? Because otherwise I'm just a talking head, you know. Um, so I think that's part of it. And I also love it when people ask me really personal questions, because I don't really have any shame. I don't know if you can tell that about me already, but I'm happy to talk about it. Anything. I'm happy to talk about anything. I think the question that I love people when they ask me about radio, because my heart is still there, and I love talking about it. And we touched on the theater of the mind earlier. So the question you could ask is, how is radio connected to being a software entrepreneur with artificial intelligence? And the answer is, I was also a fiction writing major, by the way, so that also ties in here. But the answer is, um, remember what I said, how it's a two-way street with the microphone, like that you wield, but your job is to make me feel like I'm in the conversation. So the neuroscience of music, Tony, tells us that every time your brain listens to a new song, it must instantly access every other song you've ever heard before in that moment, right? It all comes forward. So by default, all this nostalgia, emotion, connection, right? And that's a really powerful thing. Audio is sound is more powerful than sight, because for this, among many reasons, but this is a big one, right? It taps into all these other feelings. And you when it's looking for that library of music, it's trying to find familiar touch points to know where to index the new song in your brain's memory. So now writing, fiction writing, or marketing messaging, or social media messaging, or copywriting, or email writing, it doesn't really matter. All writing gets read in your head. You read it and you hear the voice that wrote it, right? And every voice, mine right now, has a frequency. It is a note on the spectrum of songs. And so the same idea applies. It's my job as the marketer to make you trust me, to make me feel that I'm writing to you specifically. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And to give you those familiar touch points so we can have a deeper conversation, right? You feel that engagement and the trust and the emotion, and bring that all forward, and sell you something in the end, right?
That is awesome. That's a huge. I never knew that, and I appreciate you sharing that with me because that's something
Sure.
I'm always learning, and this is a really good thing to learn because I had no idea.
It's fascinating, right? And it's so, that's that theater of the mind, that when the mind has to be engaged in imagination to fill in the blanks in the communication process, it's so much more powerful, right? So video, watching movies, we just kind of shut down and we get entertained. That's why I do it with a glass of tequila at night, so I can check out, you know.
An
But
escape,
reading is
right?
harder. You do too. Okay, awesome. So cheers.
Yeah.
But reading or listening to podcasts, or the radio back in the days, it's harder because it requires some effort. You know.
Absolutely. I know with the rapid growth for Clubhouse, they're saying audio is really huge. Are you on Clubhouse too?
Yeah, totally,
Yeah, so you
totally.
know how audio is huge, and obviously podcasting is really huge as well. But voice is better because I don't know. I think people could there's I mean this better than I do, but they're saying there's more things you could connect. You could connect
Yes.
deeper with just voice because sometimes video is in the way or something like that. I don't know if
It's because there's mystery to it. So it's exactly right, right? Like, remember, you didn't want to know what the DJ looked like. And then when you do find out, it's kind of a bummer most of the time, right? You were better served by your imagination. But now thanks Kardashians, we pull back the black curtain here, so everything is exposed. Like, you're looking in my office right now, and I'm in my sweatpants because I'm going to go to the gym. I did this before COVID. I need a new thing now. Everyone's doing this, it's not as cool anymore.
totally, totally. Now, if our listeners want to find out more information about your company, please give out your website address, and if they also want to follow up, give out your handles if they have any questions about your company as well.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. We're at lately.ai. So lately.ai. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Please tell me that you met me via Tony. I'm Kate Bradley Chernis on LinkedIn. Chernis is Chernis. So there's not a lot of those people out there. It's my unique last name. And I love it. I love it when people say hi and tell me that they were interested or excited. Most importantly, if you feel lifted up at all, right? Because that's what makes my day. I can share some crappy stuff that happened to me. Hopefully, it helps you even just put a smile on your face or move forward in whatever it is you're doing.
Absolutely, I think you're going to make a lot of differences. A lot of difference for people listening to this as well because they're going to be able to connect with you with what you mentioned and the experiences you've had throughout life and with the companies that you've had as well, from going from agency to running AI company. That's really cool. And before I forget, for the audience listening, I know you help different sizes of companies and people. What's your sweet spot of clients that you typically help?
For us, it's a customer that has multiple account uses. So we have a syndication ability where you can push the AI content out to all the employees in your company. So they can be on social media and not have to think about what to say and talk about company affairs, for example. So that applies to sales teams. It can apply to executives who are doing thought leadership, right? It could be digital recruitment teams or employee advocates. So for those customers, and they don't have to be very big. It could be, 10 people, for example. It could also be several 100,000 people. But for us, we find that we have negative churn with those customers because it's really hard to rip out, right? And the problem that we're solving is stop guessing what to say. And everybody guesses. It's like everybody stumbles through it. It's so interesting to me, Tony, that this fundamental thing, communication, and specifically written communication, is is really one of the worst things that people can dream of having to do, right?
So true. So true.
It's
And
so
I'm
true.
glad
It's,
that you have a solution for that. So that's really cool.
I know. I'm just thinking like we've reduced it to basically grunting with just like an emoji. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So true.
Full circle.
Absolutely. Well, Kate, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And if you could sign us off with a one word close, what would that be?
Green.
Say that again?
Green. The color green,
Why?
which is weird. I'll tell you why if you want to know.
Yeah.
Well, it's my favorite color. Number one, my eyes are green. Those are rare. And it's the color of money and it's the color of newness, spring, right?
That's awesome. Once again, thank you so much, Kate. Appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to having you back on here soon to catch up.